Senator Cox. It being 2 p.m, we'll move to question time, and I call Senator Collins.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. Yesterday, the Minister assured the Senate that Australia has, and I quote, "in terms of petrol supplies, 1.56 billion litres of petrol on hand here in Australia, 80% of it on land, around about 20% of it on the water between refineries and ports within our exclusive economic zone, 32 days' worth of diesel, 2.97 billion litres. I'm sure this will no doubt come as great comfort to the fishermen who can't fill their boats, the farmers who can't run their machinery, and the service stations across regional Australia that have been forced to ration fuel or shut off bowsers. Minister, since the fuel is apparently here, all 2.97 billion litres of it, where exactly is it, and why is it not reaching the Australians who need it to work and feed this country?"
Thank you, Senator Collins. Minister Ayres.
Well, I suppose, Senator and President, that it's trite to point out that it's not in Texas, which is where Mr. Taylor put it. The Australian response, and if you are faintly interested, Senator McGrath, in what was happening in regional Queensland, you would just give us an opportunity to not be shouted over. The approach that the government has taken is, firstly, to do that long-term hard work of making sure that the minimum stockholding obligation is being not only adhered to but exceeded. And there will be figures later in the week that will outline what the up-to-date figures are in relation to that. But what I can say is they have not changed substantially. The minister is making announcements about ensuring that Australian fuel gets to where it needs to go. That is ensuring that our supply, that our stockholding obligations is getting to the places that it needs to get to. The minister is announcing that he is temporarily amending fuel standards regarding higher sulphur levels for the next 60 days. This will enable Ampol, who currently makes this fuel here in Australia, for export markets to release that additional petrol into the domestic market.
Thank you, Senator Ayres. Senator Collins, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, it's clear the government doesn't know exactly where it is, but, Minister, the government's position appears to be this: there is no hoarding, there is no bottleneck, there is no supply being withheld, there is simply high demand for a product that is sitting somewhere in Australia in quantities sufficient to last 32 days. What is stopping 2.97 billion litres of diesel from reaching the Australians who are trying to buy it?
Thank you, Senator Collins. Minister Ayres.
Well, because this is about practical action, not debating society talking points. In relation to that additional fuel, that you claim to be so interested in, the government has been—
Minister Ayres, please resume the seat. I have called order about 5 or 6 times, and in the first question there was constant interjections, and the minute I called the minister, they started again. Please be silent. Minister Ayres.
Thank you. In relation to that, the government has been unequivocal with the producers that additional supply must go to farmers, fishers and regional communities that need it. Ampol has made the undertaking that this additional supply will be directed to regional areas, including via the spot market, where we are seeing the pressure on smaller and independent fuel wholesalers. This morning we also activated the National Coordination Mechanism to respond to emerging fuel supply chain issues, and I'm sure I'll get an opportunity in a moment to finish that point.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Collins, second supplementary.
Minister, after a roundtable to which the fishing industry was not invited, the government's solution is to publish fuel supply data once a week. No doubt a fisherman whose boat cannot leave port today will find great comfort in next Friday's spreadsheet. But perhaps the minister could explain what he is actually supposed to do in the meantime, because his fuel security exists on paper, not at the bowser.
Thank you. Senator Collins. Minister Ayres.
Well, perhaps I'll save the rest of the outline of the government's announcements today to a question that's directed towards what we're actually doing rather than debating points and social media clicks. What information in this environment is important. The conduct of political leaders and so-called political leaders is important.
Minister Ayres, please resume your seat. Once again, those on my left were out of order. There were so many of you, it's impossible to name you. I've asked for silence. Please be respectful to me and to this chamber. Minister Ayres.
Well, President, you know I don't like shouting.
Minister Ayres. Senator McKenzie.
I think that's misleading the Senate. We've all been here.
Minister Ayres.
And the way that we conduct ourselves, Australians form judgments about this, and they have formed a judgment about you, time and time again, over and over again as you get small.
Senator Ayres, please resume your seat. Senator Collins.
Just a point of order, Madam President. I was asking about what the minister was going to do, not about the conduct in the chamber.
Thank you. I will draw the minister to your question. Minister Ayres.
And I'll get an opportunity to outline that in some detail over the course of the next hour, I imagine. But information matters, and misinformation hurts.
Thank you, Minister.
And it hurts
the time for
Australians.
answering has expired. Senator Whittaker.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The conflict in the Middle East continues to escalate, involving more countries, endangering civilians and creating economic volatility and security threats across the region and beyond. Iran's reprisal attacks are occurring at a scale and depth we have not seen before. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to support Australians affected by the conflict?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Whittaker for that question, and it gives me the opportunity to again say in this chamber that the Australian government remains gravely concerned by the escalation and loss of life across the region. I've spoken this week to counterparts from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain and Qatar to express our solidarity and to welcome the assistance they have been providing to supporting Australians in the region. The Albanese government's number one priority is and always will be to keep Australians safe at home and abroad. I am pleased to report to the Senate that 3 more flights have returned to Australia today, including one from Qatar, where the airspace has been closed due to strikes for some time. More than 3,600 Australians have now returned on 26 commercial flights. Further services are scheduled in the coming days. I want to stress this could change at short notice. We are concerned this conflict will intensify and could continue for some time. The security situation is deteriorating and it is likely to get worse before it gets better. We urge Australians across the region to follow advice on Smart Traveller, including where we recommend not attending Australian missions or surrounding areas. Some missions have had to physically close because of the security situation. For Australians in the region, the government continues to urge you to leave if you can and if it is safe to do so. We know there are over 10,000 Australians in Lebanon and the situation there is deteriorating. Commercial flights remain the best way to depart the region. We strongly suggest Australians in the Middle East take a seat on a commercial flight if one is available. It may be the last chance for some time. Please do not wait until it is too late. And our advice to other Australians remains that do not travel to most of the Middle East.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Whittaker, first supplementary.
Thank you. There are more than 100,000 Australians in the Middle East. Officers from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade have been working around the clock to provide support to Australians in the region. What work have those staff in the region been doing to help Australians?
Minister Wong.
Thank you. I do want to take this opportunity to recognise the work of DFAT staff and the crisis response teams who have been supporting Australians throughout the Middle East. Officers of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade are working around the clock in challenging and often volatile circumstances. 9 of our posts have experienced missile and drone attacks. Some debris has fallen within a few hundred metres of our missions. Many of our staff are sleeping or attempting to sleep in bomb shelters or basements with dozens of others. Ambassadors are working many hours, very lengthy days, to arrange travel for Australians, particularly when airspace was closed. One of our ambassadors speaks of telling her young children that the sound of air defence interceptors being deployed is a good sound because it means they are being kept safe. We have many weary but proud Australian representatives supporting each other to do the best they can for Australians, and I thank them.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Whittaker, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. I think we all thank them for that really important work. The conflict in the Middle East is also causing economic disruption around the world, particularly with regard to oil prices and fuel supply. What is the Albanese Labor government...
Order! Senator McKim.
What is the Albanese Labor government doing to ensure Australians have access to the fuel that they need?
Thank you, Senator Whittaker. Minister Wong.
President, the International Energy Agency has said the challenge facing the world oil market is unprecedented. And we know the impact on fuel prices, supply chains and inflation will continue. I spoke to the Saudi Foreign Minister today, including about what Saudi Arabia is doing to increase its contribution to global oil supply. Minister Bone has today directed more fuels into the Australian market, meaning more of the fuel made in Australia will stay in Australia. And the National Coordination Mechanism is bringing industry, states, territories and partners together so that fuel can reach those who need it. The government has also been clear with industry. This is an international crisis, not a commercial opportunity. It is also not a political opportunity for those opposite. The Coalition might have realised after the last few months that not everything is a political opportunity for them to seek to exploit. I would say to the Coalition, it is time to learn something about putting the national interest above your own political interest. We, for our part, will keep working in the national interest.
Has expired. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. In a recent interview, Minister, Reserve Bank Deputy Governor Andrew Hauser said inflation was well above target even before the conflict in the Middle East. Given economists widely accept that higher fuel prices push up transport costs and business input costs across the economy, why didn't the Treasurer act sooner to get inflation under control when it was already above target, before rising petrol prices risked pushing inflation even higher?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
And I thank Senator Hume for the question. And I think both the Treasurer and myself have said a number of times, including before the Middle East conflict broke out, that inflation remains higher than we would like, for longer than we would like. But I would also point out to Senator Hume that it is much lower than what we inherited when you left government. Much lower. Much lower. I think the May quarter 22 was 2.1%, I think, from memory, and it peaked that year at about 7.8% in the December quarter. So it was higher and rising when we came to government. It has come down considerably since then, which is a good thing and something that those opposite should have welcomed at the time. I don't believe they did. We have seen a recent uptick in some of the latest economic data, and inflation, productivity and reform are all issues that we have spoken about, the Treasurer and myself, for months, and we will continue to focus on that. And our approach has been to repair the budget, to repair the mess we inherited, the $1 trillion of debt, the massive deficits that were increasing, to pay down debt, to pay down interest on that debt, to find savings, to repair the budget and to invest in cost of living help, much of which you opposed for the entire term of the previous parliament.
to make sure that as inflation was higher and coming down, we could provide that cost of living help, which we did. That is the approach that we will continue to take in the lead-up to the budget, and it has been well recognised by this government that inflation has ticked up and is higher than we would have liked.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Deputy Governor Hauser also warned that inflation may only return to the midpoint of the Reserve Bank's target range in the middle of 2028. Now, this forecast was made before the conflict in the Middle East. Minister, why has your government refused to heed the advice of economists, contain government expenditure and act on bringing inflation down, leaving Australians to pay more for everything?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I would also remind Senator Hume that the economic plan, if you could call it that they took to the last election, stood for higher taxes, lower wages, bigger deficits and more debt. That is what was produced on the eve of the election, when their costings that they were ashamed of were tipped out at the last minute. So to stand here and criticise our plan, which was about repairing the budget, paying down debt.
Please resume your seat. Senator Hume.
On a point of order which was relevant, with 30 seconds to go, I'd like to understand what the government's going to do, not what the coalition
The Minister
might.
has been talking about the government. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. And I would just remind those, as we look for sensible savings in the budget, as we have done, where we have found $114 billion. The cuts the opposition took the last election was to oppose age pension increases, to oppose cheaper childcare, to oppose cheaper medicines, to oppose the record investment in public hospitals, to attack programs like free TAFE and PRAC payments, to get rid of, to reimpose the activity
Thank
test.
You, Minister. The
that was the plan from the opposition.
Senator Hume, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Deputy Governor Andrew Hauser also warned that if inflation expectations are not kept under control, it can lead to toxic high inflation that is, I quote, bad for everyone. This week, inflation expectations have surged to a three-year high of 6.1%. Minister, because your government failed to act earlier to get inflation under control, are Australians now facing the toxic inflation that the Deputy Governor warned about?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, the pressure that has come on inflation in recent times has been directly linked to the conflict in the Middle East, and anyone to suggest otherwise isn't looking at what's happening in the Middle East or reading the data that is coming out of that, including an oil barrel price that's moved from about $60 a barrel to over $120. I think it's currently trading at about $100 a barrel. So, to omit that from your question really says something about the seriousness of the question you posed to me. In relation to the work before government, and this is work that we are doing every single day, is looking at how we get the budget in better shape, how we find sensible savings without attacking the services and systems that people in this country rely upon. So sensible savings, look at how we're managing inflation and addressing some of the productivity challenges in the economy,
Minister.
and that will be our
focus. Has
focus.
expired. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Wong. Minister, your government has been complicit in Israel's genocide in Gaza. Now, not only have you backed the illegal Israel-US-led war, you have taken us to war. Trump and Netanyahu are bombing civilian infrastructure, apartment blocks, hospitals, schools, killing children, women, men in Iran and Lebanon. At the same time, Israel intensifies its war crimes in Gaza and the West Bank. Israel is killing civilians in Palestine, Lebanon and Iran at the same time. The Prime Minister said last year, the position of the Australian government is clear. Every innocent life matters. Yet you continue to support Israel and cheerlead Trump's bombing campaign, which has killed close to 2,000 civilians just in the last 2 weeks. Was the Prime Minister's statement just hollow words?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Yet again, the Greens political party engages in misinformation in that question. What I would say is we do call on all parties to observe international humanitarian law. We do recognise the awful images we are seeing. We do understand and have consistently called for the importance of observance of international law, including the observance of the Geneva Convention. The approach of the Greens political party is one that relies on misinformation, assertions which are incorrect, because they see benefit in raising the heat. They see benefit in raising the heat and in promoting anger.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Waters, I haven't called you. I'm waiting for order, particularly from those behind you. Senator Waters.
Point of order. I'd like the minister to withdraw that. It is false, and it is a distraction from the actual question
Waters,
which
that
was
is
asked.
a debating point. Minister Watt.
Point of order, President. Anyone who listened to Senator Faruqi's question will have heard that was fully laden with imputations.
Senator Watt, that is also not a point of order. I've indicated to Senator Waters that was not a point of order. Minister Wong.
Well, I invite any reasonable observer to look at the way in which the Greens political party have approached this conflict or others. The information that they put forward, which is misinformation, the falsehoods that are asserted, including in that question. And I think most reasonable Australians would say that the Greens political party's agenda is about raising the heat. We on this side do not believe that seeking to make people angry is good for our country. We do not believe that trying to exploit concerns of compassionate Australians is the decent thing to do.
Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, as Israel expands its attacks in the region, it has intensified the blockade of Gaza, closing crossings, severely throttling the flow of aid and halting desperately needed evacuations of patients and wounded people. And this follows the deregistration of almost 37 aid organisations. Minister, what actions have you taken to get aid back into Gaza, or are you just too busy warmongering?
Senator Faruqi, withdraw the last comment.
Withdraw.
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Well, I think what I described in an answer to the first question, President, was demonstrated by that question. But I will go now to the peace plan. And one of the discussions, well, you see, this is the difficulty. Senator Faruqi, on the one hand, asks us what we are doing to promote the peace plan.
Sorry, Minister Wong. Please resume your seat. Come to order. Senator McKim, you are being disrespectful to me. I've asked for order. Minister Wong, please continue.
Senator Faruqi is asking about the implementation of the peace plan in Gaza at the same time as she is criticising it. That's a matter for her. In fact, one of the discussions I had today with the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia was in part focused on the fact that there was insufficient progress on the peace plan in relation to Gaza. For the reasons we understand, the region is very focused on a conflict that has now brought in almost a dozen nations, and the importance of ensuring aid flows.
Time for answering has expired. Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, given your government's failure to pressure Israel to end the blockade, brave Australians are risking their lives again by joining the global Samud flotilla to deliver aid to Gaza. Previously, Australians on the flotilla were kidnapped in international waters, then abused, tortured, punched, spat on, denied medication and access to a lawyer. Will you this time around commit to full diplomatic and consular support for courageous Australians joining the flotilla mission?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Again, we will provide consular support to Australians wherever we can. And our position is that humanitarian aid should flow at scale into Gaza.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ghosh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. Global energy markets remain disrupted due to the war in the Middle East. In response, the Albanese Labor government has today announced measures to enable more fuel into the Australian market. Could the Minister please explain this change in policy and outline how it will ease the pressure on the Australian fuel market?
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Ayres.
Well, in addition to the highest level of domestic supply in 15 years, the government is taking additional measures today, and they are as follows. The Minister and the government is temporarily amending Australia's fuel quality standards to allow higher sulphur levels for the next 60 days. This will allow around 100 million litres a month of new supply that would otherwise have been exported to be blended instead into Australian domestic supply. In return, Ampol Australia has committed to ensure that this redirected supply will be prioritised for regions of shortage and for the wholesale spot market that supports independent distributors and harvesters. While Australian fuel consumption has not changed, this will help relieve pressure on distribution chains disrupted by elevated demand. That additional supply must help the people who need it, particularly farmers, fishers and regional communities. I can also confirm that the National Coordination Mechanism will continue to convene to respond to emerging fuel supply chain issues. By bringing together all levels of government, the mechanism will work together on supply chain issues, bottlenecks and help facilitate action across Australia. This builds on a suite of measures and engagements with industry that have been occurring over the course of the conflict to secure supply and put downwards pressure on fuel prices. This is the way the government engages in a sensible and mature and Australian way, not a hyper-partisan way where you swing at every ball, but work our way through these issues with industry in a way that actually delivers for regional Australians.
Has expired. Senator Ghosh, first supplementary.
Australian petrol prices have been rising in response to the disruption in international energy markets. How is the Albanese Labor government engaging with fuel importers, retailers and users? And what is the government doing to stop price gouging?
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Ayres.
Well, thanks, Senator Ghosh. President, as I indicated earlier in the week, the government is supporting fuel wholesalers and retailers to get ACCC approval to coordinate supply and unlock bottlenecks. That measure allows the normal competitive arrangements where companies are prohibited from that kind of engagement to work together to ensure that supply gets to places all over Australia, from Brisbane to the Bellarine, and ensures that our mechanism of working with industry to identify parts of Australia where there are problems will be effectively met. We've doubled penalties for false or misleading conduct and cartel behaviour, and we've given the ACCC more tools, like extending petrol price monitoring powers.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ghosh. Oh, when you've quite finished, I believe that's you, Senator Henderson. Come to order, Senator Henderson. Come to order. You can either sit in silence or leave the chamber. Your ongoing comments when I've called order are incredibly disrespectful to me and this chamber. Senator Ghosh, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Australians are looking to their political leaders to protect the national interest and provide clear and calm guidance. Why is it important to provide this leadership and guidance?
Minister Ayres.
Because in an international challenge, or a challenge that faces Australia, it's important to act in the Australian national interest. We are not going to let this be a commercial opportunity, and I don't think Australians will let it be a political opportunity for the most hyper-partisan, bitter, divided and divisive opposition in Australian history. What will not help in this situation is continued spikes in demand. The Australian Institute of Petroleum has described that as unprecedented, outstripping the surge seen at the outbreak of the Russia-Ukrainian war in 2022. We will do what it takes to protect Australia, and Australians will form judgments about this nasty divided rabble over here who swing at every ball in the same way and then are surprised at the result. As Australians walk away from them, have another look at them again and walk away from them again.
Has expired. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you. My question is for the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator McCarthy. Last week, the Territory Labor candidate for the Nightcliff by-election said that Territory Labor is proud to now oppose the federal Labor government's plan to destroy Larrakia country at Binnabarra-Lee Point. Your Labor colleagues in the Territory have backflipped against you and now want this project to be cancelled. Will you, as Minister for Indigenous Australians, ensure your government listens to your NT colleagues and scraps this ecocidal project, or do you still want the destruction of Larrakia country to go ahead?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Can I indicate, as I understand it, that project to which the senator refers—
Is this a point of order?
Sorry, I apologise. You're correct. Point of order on the person to whom the question is directed, President. As I understand it, this project is a project that is managed by Defence Housing Australia, so the responsible minister would be, I think, Senator McAllister. I'd invite the senator to— Well, again, I'd remind the Senate that the Westminster system gives ministers accountability to the department for those areas and portfolios for which they are responsible. And so the appropriate question should go to the minister representing the responsible minister.
Senator Thorpe, did you wish to redirect that question to Minister McAllister?
No, I don't. This is very relevant to the Minister for Indigenous Australians.
So what I will say to you is the minister will answer it in the way that she sees fit, because the Leader of the Government has indicated it's a question more appropriately directed to Minister McAllister, but you've indicated you want Minister McCarthy, so I'll direct her to answer the question. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Thorpe, for the question. And I have to say a huge congratulations to Ed Smelt, the new member for Nightcliff in the Northern Territory. I think it was really important that he was able to walk around the electorate of Nightcliff.
Please resume your seat. Senator— beg your pardon. Senator
Point of
Thorpe.
order, President, on relevance. I've learnt that much, and that's not relevant.
Senator Thorpe, as I indicated to you, the person responsible for the portfolio to which your question is directed is Minister McAllister. You indicated to me you acknowledge that, but nevertheless the question is to go to Minister— Senator Thorpe, I'm answering your point of order. Minister McCarthy, you invited her to answer your question, and she answers it in whatever way Minister McCarthy sees fit, because she's not the responsible minister.
Thank you, President, and I do thank Senator Thorpe for the question, and I am very conscious that the Nightcliff election took place on the land of the Larrakia, and I acknowledge that Ed Smelt, as the Labor candidate, fought very hard and diligently for that seat. I acknowledge him and his family and all of those who supported him. And yes, it's certainly a point that Ed has taken to the election. And I would say, President, that the development activity at the site of Lee Point is currently paused, pending the outcome of proceedings before the Northern Territory Civil and Administrative Tribunal, and there is no active development currently underway. To be clear, as has been pointed out, Defence Housing Australia has ceased construction activity at the site other than essential site maintenance agreed with the Tribunal, and will not recommence works until all legal, heritage and environmental requirements are met, which is what we would expect.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Did federal Labor give the okay to Territory Labor to take this position against the federal Labor Party in order to beat the Greens in that election? Or did you just get a nasty surprise to see Territory Labor break ranks, side with the Greens and come out against you?
Minister Watt.
Point of order, President. I mean, there is no relevance whatsoever between that question and this minister's responsibilities. I mean, I don't know whether you've got the capacity to rule it out of order, but
thank you, Minister Watt. As I've pointed out to Senator Thorpe, on the advice of Minister Wong, the responsible minister is Minister McAllister. Senator Thorpe has indicated that she wants Minister McCarthy to answer those questions. Minister Wong.
I have an additional point of order. That doesn't relate to matters of government. That is a question that is entirely about an assertion as to political. Well,
Order.
Shall we have? Well, it wasn't a discussion of colour-coded spreadsheets either, Senator McKenzie.
Order.
But I submit that the question should be ruled out of order. There is no aspect of that which touches upon government administration.
Thank you, Senator Wong. I'll seek the advice of the clerk. I am advised that Minister Wong's correct. The matter doesn't. Your first supplementary, Senator Thorpe, does not go to any portfolio matter. It was a political question, and if Minister McCarthy wishes to respond to the political question, then I invite her to do so. Minister McCarthy. Okay. Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
Has Territory Labor met with your government or sought a meeting on this, or was this just a gammon fake promise they made to beat the Greens in the election?
Minister Watt.
And I'd ask that you rule that question out of order.
Right. Order. The first part of the question is in order, but I remind Senator Thorpe once again that Minister McCarthy is not the responsible minister, but I will invite Minister McCarthy to respond to the question.
Thank you, President. I'm certainly very proud of the new candidate for Nightcliff. I certainly wish him well, and I certainly wish Northern Territory Labor well in terms of their role as opposition in the Northern Territory Assembly.
Thank you. Senator Cadell.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Agriculture, again, Minister McCarthy. Minister, the Australian Government's premier advising body on farming, ABARES, recently found your energy policies are set to take 18 million hectares out of farming production and to create carbon credits. ABARES found that over half this farming land will be in our rich high rainfall and wheat sheep areas, and that over 40% of farmers will leave farming altogether after selling their carbon credits. Minister, during a time of unprecedented instability, why is the government sacrificing farming jobs and agricultural land, making it harder for our farmers to feed our nation?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister McCarthy.
Well, thank you, President, and thank you, Senator, for the question. Our government is very proud to support our farmers right across Australia, President. In fact, it is the Albanese Labor government that's committed to a very robust, sustainable agricultural industry that continues to thrive in Australia. Since coming to government, we've been delivering for Australian farmers and producers, strengthening biosecurity, boosting the ag workforce, opening up new trade opportunities and improving farm sustainability. And throughout the Albanese government's time, acting on climate change and seizing the economic opportunity before our nation, including keeping the trade door open. Now, Senator McKenzie, just because we care about the farmers across Australia doesn't mean we need to hear the interjections from the senator opposite. Our government is working with farmers, not against them, to build a stronger, cleaner and more profitable future for Australian agriculture. Industry finally has a government willing to match their own climate ambition, and our government is delivering that work, investing over $2 billion to support agriculture decarbonisation, resilience and innovation. Table 1, that includes $60.8 million to support emissions reduction efforts in agriculture and land, $87 million to establish the Net Zero Emissions Agriculture Cooperative Research Centre.
Across the chamber.
They don't want to hear. They don't want to hear what we're doing in terms of assisting our farmers across Australia, President. They're just not interested. They're just
Senator
a rabble.
Wong. Order. Order across the chamber. Senator Cadell, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, a consortium of Australian universities have found that another 12 million hectares of land is needed to host wind turbines, solar panels and transmission lines under your renewables-only energy plan. Has the government requested any advice?
Senator Cadell, I'm sorry, please resume your seat. Senator Ayres, I do need to hear the question, and your interjections are disrespectful and disorderly. Senator Cadell, please continue.
Has the government requested any advice on how its energy plans will impact Australia's energy food security, given that now 30 million hectares are being taken?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. I'm so eager to answer. I stood up before you. Thank you, and thank you to the senator for the question. We can see that the new leader of the Nationals is really making an influence on that side. I mean, farmers are choosing to make money by keeping and planting trees to generate carbon credits and by hosting renewables.
That's right.
And by hosting renewables. So why don't the Nats support the farmers choosing how they want to earn money?
President, Minister McCarthy. Order. Senator Canavan and Senator Ayres, which part of order did either of you fail to understand? Seriously. The minute the minister got to her feet, suddenly interjections start across the chamber. That is disrespectful. Minister McCarthy, please continue. Thank you. Senator Cadell, second supplementary. Senator McKenzie.
Minister, the government has also scrapped a 1,500 gigalitre cap on water buybacks in the Murray-Darling and removed the socio-economic neutrality test. How much farming land will be lost from the government's decision to strip more water away from communities, given the town of Burke has lost 40% of their water and 60% of their population? Will the government's uncapped water buybacks put at risk the viability of many farming towns?
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
I haven't called you yet. I'm sorry, Minister. Those on my— Senator Watt, come to order. Minister McCarthy. I just called the minister. Senator McKenzie, as I said yesterday, you always think it's your right to have the last word. It is not. Now, I'm serious. You either sit there in silence or leave the chamber. I've had enough of your interjections. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. In the excitement of listening to everyone being an expert on farmers, I just wanted to reiterate that I'll take the interjection by Senator McGrath that there are real farmers on that side. So I wonder why they have to keep asking the questions then, President. Maybe it's because we know that the new leader of the Nationals once said that farmers are not the Nationals' core constituency. This is the new leader of the Nationals. Once said that. So I pick up the interjection by the members opposite.
Senator McGrath.
So, see, Not interested at all. Not interested at all. You say you're here.
Senator
You're
McCarthy,
here for the
Minister
real
McCarthy,
farmers, but you don't want to hear the answers.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Cadell.
On direct relevance.
I'm sorry, Senator Cadell, I cannot hear you. I'll wait until the chamber is respectful.
Thank you for your protection, President.
Senator Cadell.
On direct relevance, this isn't an episode of Farmer Wants a Wife, it's Farmer Wants an Answer.
Senator Cadell. Senator McCarthy, you've finished. Order. Order. Come to order across the chamber. Senator Ayres, I've called order. I have Senator Hanson on my list, but I can't see Senator Hanson in the chamber, so is that you, Senator Whitten? If you change, it's helpful to let me know.
Sorry.
Senator Whitten.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance, Minister Gallagher. After Equality Australia was rejected by the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, rejected by the AAT and rejected by the full federal court for deductible gift recipient status on the basis that it was considered a lobbyist group, why did the Labor government overrule the judiciary and legislate that they should be granted deductible gift recipient?
Just a moment, Minister. Senator Whitten, this matter, as you may know, is currently before a committee of the whole, so that level of specifics in relation to the subject matter shouldn't be being asked as a question. You may wish to ask in more general terms. Senator Whitten.
I might save my question for another day.
Okay. Does One Nation— I do have Senator Hanson down. If you have, with the indulgence of the Senate, I'm assuming that we can move to a first supplementary. No? Senator Whitten?
The questions—
I just seek advice. Senator Whitten, the minister is quite agreeable to answering your question. You are new to the Senate. I think you deserve some leniency in that regard. So I will invite the minister to answer your question. Minister.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Whitten for the question. And I can speak in general terms, so as not to interfere with a bill that is currently before the Senate in the committee stage. But there are two avenues, essentially, for deductible gift recipient status, and one goes through the process that Senator Whitten outlined in, fitting under the criteria that's used for administrative approval, and then there is the capacity for government to bring legislation before the parliament which seeks to include other organisations that the government believes are suitable for DGR status through legislative processes where they get debated on the floor of the Senate, which is currently what's happening in relation to the organisation that Senator Whitten outlines in his question. Within that, within legislative approaches, there are often a wide variety. Sometimes it's only a couple of organisations, sometimes it can be 10 or more, and they are often across a broad spectrum of civil society, from community organisations, faith-based organisations, fundraising organisations for particular causes. The government considers this through our normal processes and brings that legislation here for debate, and it requires a vote of the Senate in order to pass that.
Thank you. So, Senator Whitten, if you have a first supplementary in general terms.
As general as I can make it, President. We know that Equality Australia is influential in political circles. Who pushed for Equality Australia to get this special legislative treatment when the organisation was rejected by the full federal court as a lobbyist group?
Minister.
Well, the consideration the government gives is through our own decision-making process about DGR status, and I would say, in relation to the organisation that Senator Whitten has outlined, the government believes this organisation does very, very important work for the LGBTIQ+ community in terms of advocacy, support, counselling, education across a whole range of functions. That organisation makes a significant community contribution to our country. And I would say to Senator Whitten, I understand you don't agree with that listing, but the government and those on this side of the chamber acknowledge the very valuable and significant role it plays in supporting the LGBTIQ+ community and their families, and we strongly support the listing of that organisation, and no doubt the Senate will have more to consider in relation to that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Whitten, second supplementary.
I will continue to be as general as I can.
Thank you.
Deductible gift recipients are provided a special privilege because they are judged to be a public good. Australians forgo their hard-earned tax dollars to allow many wonderful charities to raise money to do their vital work. DGR status is not to be handed out as a political favour. Equality Australia is an entity that peddles radical gender ideology to the children of Australia.
Order.
Why won't the government allow parents to have a choice with this outrageous display of nepotism?
Thank you, Senator Whitten. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. Myself and those on this side of the chamber would disassociate ourselves from any of those comments just made imputations and assertions being made by Senator Whitten about that organisation. And it is deeply disappointing that we continue to see culture wars and divisive attacks on incredibly important organisations in this country. I accept, Senator Whitten, that you don't agree, but I think
Senator Whish-Wilson, that
to demean that organisation
unnecessary.
And characterise it that way is incredibly disappointing. That organisation has saved lives, supports communities, educates people. This country should be more about what organisations like that do right across the spectrum than it is about the kind of language and division that you seek to peddle in this chamber. The country would be much better off, and it's organisations like Equality...
The time has expired for answering. Senator Mulholland.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Early Childhood Education, Senator Walsh. The Albanese Labor government is focused on delivering for Australian families, including the many families who rely on quality early learning. Can the minister please update the Senate on how the government is delivering on its commitments in early education and care, and how is this providing practical support to Australian parents and helping our kids get a great start to life?
Thank you, Senator Mulholland. Minister Walsh.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Mulholland, for the question. And this has been a pretty tough week for Australia and the world. There's a lot of really tough news out there, so I'm really pleased to be able to stand up and update the Senate on some good news for Australian families and for Australian children. Because, yes, Senator, the Albanese Labor government is delivering practical solutions that families need to thrive. We know quality early learning gives children a great start in life, and it helps parents, especially mums, return to work when they're ready. So we're backing Australian families. We're backing them with more access to quality early learning with our $1 billion Building Early Education Fund, delivering more centres in the outer suburbs and regions where families need them most. We've announced 4 agreements with the states and territories to deliver almost 2,000 new early learning places for families, and 80% of those places will be co-located with schools. That's just the sort of practical support parents need, helping them avoid the double drop-off and replace it with a one-stop drop. And I saw the benefits of our fund when I visited the remote town of Derby in the Kimberley a fortnight ago. We're building a new early learning centre with the West Australian Government and Minderoo to be run by the local Noongar Women's Group. and one mum, Casey, told me her children Lawrence and Freya have thrived at the local playgroup. They like the reading time and learning through play. With another baby on the way, Casey is excited about being able to send her next child to a quality local early learning centre. This is a great example of the difference that access to quality early learning can make for parents, for children and for a community, and we're proud to deliver it.
Thank you, Minister Walsh. Senator Mulholland, first supplementary.
We know that access to subsidised early learning gives children a great start in life, and it helps parents return to work when it works for them. Minister, what other measures has the Albanese Labor government introduced to help families access quality early education?
Thank you, Senator Mulholland. Minister Walsh.
Thank you, Senator. And every child deserves access to quality early learning, no matter their postcode or what their parents do. And that's why Labor's 3-day guarantee started this year on January 5. Just like every child has the right to go to school, every child now has the right to 3 days childcare subsidy, and every parent has the subsidy support they need to get back to work when they're ready. Now, of course, in their 10 long wasted years in government, the Coalition had a different approach. They reduced flexibility for mums with their punishing work activity test. They cut off childcare subsidy for mums who wanted to work less than 3 days a week. They cut off childcare subsidy for mums who wanted to return to work just 1 or 2 days a week, as so many mums do. They locked families out, and we are backing families in.
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Senator Mulholland, second supplementary.
Thank you. As a mum, it is great to hear how the Albanese Labor government is opening up access to quality early education and care for Australian families, and how this access is supporting parents and families. Are there any barriers that stand in the way of delivering this practical support to Australian women and their families, not just the ones here in the chamber?
Thank you, Senator Mulholland. Minister Walsh.
Well, yes, Senator Mulholland, and of course it is those opposite, because in their 10 wasted years in government, the only thing they ever did was to cut access to early learning. And since we came to government, they've had 4 coalition party leaders and 0 policies on early education. Now, we know that they have a problem with women, and they know that they have a problem with women too. So, of course, it makes perfect sense that they're looking to the future with Senator Matt Hills-Hoyst Canavan to lead them.
Minister Walsh, withdraw. Withdraw, thank you. Senator Walsh, you need to withdraw.
I withdraw.
Thank you.
And what a record Senator Canavan has on supporting women. He voted against the 3-day guarantee. He has voted against paid parental leave, which we are extending to 26 weeks. He voted against practical support for mums and their children. On this side, we're building the practical support Australian families
the time
deserve.
for answering has expired. Senator Dean Smith.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. The government keeps telling Australians there is no fuel supply problem and that stocks remain strong. Yet today a service station in York in Western Australia, just 90 minutes from Perth, is counting down the hours until it runs completely out of fuel, has imposed a 50-litre limit and is now turning away farmers because there simply isn't enough diesel to go around. Minister, if Australia's fuel supplies are supposedly so strong, why are farmers in Western Australia being turned away from the Bowser?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Ayres.
Well, in addition to the measures that I've outlined earlier in question time today that sit on top of the measures that the government has taken, has been taken over the course of the last 10 days of the crisis in the Middle East, on top of the fuel security measures that we've taken since we were elected. We have, of course, been talking to farmers' groups around the country. All of us who've been engaged in this, the Minister engaged since the beginning of the crisis with the farming and fuel and fertiliser communities. I spent some time talking to rice growers in the Riverina today. And that's why the measures that we have taken this week to direct the ACCC to remove the obstacles to fuel companies working together to direct supply to places like the community that you outline that have, of course, suffered in the wake of a series of spikes in the demand that have differential effects across the country. It is more acute in some parts of the country than it is in others, particularly where retailers are accessing supply on the spot market. That does create difficulties where there are spikes in demand. Now, what the job of all of us in this place, the government's job, is to govern and to be accountable for that. I would submit that the job that your colleagues have is to work in the national interest and not set your hair on fire and try and create a sense of panic and crisis, which drives some of that behaviour. Not all, but some of that behaviour. It's about taking responsibility and acting in the national interest.
Senator Smith, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The employee at the York service station has told the West Australian newspaper Monday was our last delivery and we're not sure when the next delivery will be. Minister, if the government truly has a firm grip on the country's fuel supply, could you tell the Senate when that next delivery will arrive, or are regional Australians expected to simply wait and hope?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Ayres.
Well, of course, as Senator Smith knows, nobody in this place is in a position to give a specific outline in relation to a specific petrol station. That's not something that anybody could sensibly do.
Order.
However, what I can say to that employee,
I'm sorry, Minister Ayres, please resume your seat. I cannot hear the minister's response, and that's because those on my left are way too loud and disorderly. Minister Ayres.
What I can say to that employee, his or her manager, and the community that they serve, is that the measures that are announced today will make a significant difference. 100 million litres a month of new petrol supply as a result of changing the fuel standards. The National Coordination Mechanism continuing to operate to respond to situations like the one that you have outlined, or the many situations that I've been engaged directly in with the farming community over the course of the last few weeks.
Thank you, Minister Ayres. Senator Smith, second supplementary.
Minister, can the Albanese Labor government guarantee that Australia will not run out of fuel?
Minister Ayres.
Well, it's interesting that there was an article that made that assertion in the Australian Financial Review earlier this week, precisely the one that you asserted. It had to be withdrawn. It had to be withdrawn. And what we have outlined, and the minister has outlined, is that the amount of fuel on hand, which 1.56 billion litres of petrol, 2.97 billion litres of diesel, has not materially changed since the war began some 10 days or so ago. Ship movements, arrivals here in our ports, I couldn't be more relevant.
Minister Ayres. Perhaps you should drive a truck, Senator Mackenzie, during question time, and then at least you wouldn't be interjecting. Senator Cash.
Point of order in relation to relevance. Programmatic specificity is not what the Australian people require. They actually require an answer to the question, are we or aren't we?
I've called. Thank you. I do allow leaders some leniency, but that went beyond where my leniency ends. The minister is being relevant. Minister, please continue.
I didn't understand what you just said, but look, the reserves are the strongest that they have been in 15 years. The amounts of fuel on hand have not changed substantially. Ship movements are the same at the moment, but we are not complacent. We are watching it very closely.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Sheldon.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Industrial Relations, Senator Watt. It's been nearly 18 months since the Albanese Labor government's landmark same job, same pay laws came into effect. How are the government's changes to these laws and other reforms helping thousands of Australians deal with cost of living pressures?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Well, thanks, Sheldon. It is good to get a question about industrial relations. Senator Sheldon, we're waiting to get a question from the new Shadow Minister for Industrial Relations, but we'll keep asking about it in the meantime, because thousands of workers across the country have benefited from pay increases under the Albanese Labor government's landmark same job, same pay laws, because someone shouldn't be paid less than their co-worker simply because they're employed as labour hire. It's estimated that more than 8,000 workers across mining, aviation, railway, meat processing, automotive, water treatment and many other industries have benefited so far from this Labor initiative. That includes hundreds of Qantas flight attendants who've secured pay rises of up to $20,000 a year to bring them into line with employees directly employed by the business. And at 3 of BHP's Bowen Basin mines in central Queensland, 1,800 mine workers will receive average pay rises of up to $30,000 per year due to Labor's same job, same pay laws. But of course there's one central Queenslander who isn't so keen on these workers getting a fair deal. I'm talking about, who could that be? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's a man who feels happy dressing up like a coal miner, but he's even happier when he comes to Canberra and cuts the pay of coal miners. The new Nationals leader, Senator Canavan, has voted consistently against Labor's laws that would mean a better deal for workers, including in central Queensland coal mines. He's for dressing up in high-vis, but he's against higher wages for coal miners, flight attendants, meat workers and more. Senator Canavan's record shows he's a massive risk to the pay and living standards of those he claims to represent. And I can tell you, regional Queenslanders don't need a Canberra Zoolander who pats a bit of dirt on his face and struts around coal mines. They want secure jobs and better pay, and that's what they're getting under the Albanese Labor government.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
The Albanese Labor government is focused on ensuring Australians are earning more and keeping more of what they earn. How has criminalising wage theft ensured everyday Aussie workers aren't being ripped off by their bad bosses?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Well, thanks again, Senator Sheldon. The Albanese Labor government stood up for Australian workers by delivering on our promise to criminalise wage theft across the nation. Until recently, if an employer stole from workers— Senator Hume, if you've got a question about IR, you're welcome to ask one, but it seems that you miss out. I guess you're not on Tactics Committee, so you don't get much of a go.
Minister Watt, direct your questions to the chair.
Until recently, if an employer stole from a worker's pay packet, it wasn't illegal, and that's why the Albanese government made it a criminal offence to deliberately underpay workers, something, of course, that Senator Canavan and the Nationals voted against, just like the Liberals and just like One Nation. So, on a personal level, I congratulate Senator Canavan on his election to the Nats leadership. Personally, I could not be happier than to see him become the leader. This is the man who dragged the Liberals to drop net zero and who will now drag them even further to the right as he chases One Nation. Now, I rarely agree with Mr Barnaby Joyce, but he was spot on when he said there'll be a lot of similarities between Matt, myself and Pauline, and that's because the Nats are with One Nation and so are the Liberals.
Senator Sheldon, Second supplementary.
Thank you. Whether it's same job, same pay or
Order.
criminalising wage theft, the Albanese Labor government is helping Australians keep more of their pay in their pocket. The government's reforms to paid parental leave are also delivering financial security to around 180,000 families a year. At one of the most important times in their lives, how are these changes helping young families deal with cost of living challenges?
Hang on, Minister. Senator McKenzie, that was out of order. Now, I'm going to ask for silence after I've called the minister and he begins to respond. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President. Well, last year the Albanese Labor government's historic reforms to paid parental leave began. These changes were designed to help working mums and dads be better supported through the early years of their child's development. Not only did these reforms increase the leave period by 2 weeks, they also increased the entitlement by $775 and, importantly, for the first time included paying superannuation during the leave period. And what did Senator Canavan and the Nationals do when they had the chance to support working mums and dads? They voted against our paid parental leave changes. Now, Senator Canavan has a long record of not backing women in the workforce. Who could forget him saying that the gender pay gap is not real? Tell that to Australian women. Well, Australians are about to get to know Senator Canavan much, much better, and the people most worried about that are those sitting in Liberal Party marginal seats.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Wong.
They really are very worried, aren't they, President? But on that basis, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.